They backtracked to figure out, well, what was it that made the immune system so good in fighting influenza? And they discovered that it was the fiber being consumed by the microbiome. And when the microbes eat the fiber, they release short-chain fatty acids. And here's what the short-chain fatty acids were doing in the lungs, not in the gut, in the lungs. Recruiting CD8 cells. CD8 cells are the cells that you want to fight the virus. You're getting the right soldiers on the battlefield.
And that was just a taste of what you're going to learn in this exciting episode. Hello and welcome to Goodness Love Alive. We're your hosts, Sarah and Matt. And today we're going to be diving into all things COVID-19. Should you be taking it seriously, and what you can do to optimize the organ that actually controls 70% of your immune system.
Dr. Bulsiewicz is a total gut nerd. He's a gastroenterologist as well as an epidemiologist. So the perfect combination, we think, to talk about COVID-19. Let us know in the comments what you think as you watch this incredible interview, and we will see you after the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, we are talking to Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, known as the Gut Health MD. We've known Will for almost a year now, over a year now, and we originally came to know each other through our mutual love of gut health. But Dr. Will, he is here today to talk to us about all things COVID-19. And this is due to his background in epidemiology and internal medicine. And Dr. Will, I'll let you take over. Give us a bit of an intro to yourself and why you've really dug into COVID-19 and all the research.
Well, I think we're all digging into COVID-19 and all the research, right? And so, but I guess from my perspective, it's kind of interesting for me because I'm a practicing gastroenterologist. I was on the Gut Solution with you guys. You know, we were up in New York not that long ago interviewing and talking to each other. And it's amazing how much times have changed. And, you know, if you go back to my training, just so people know, I'm a board certified gastroenterologist. I'm also board certified in internal medicine. I was the chief resident of my residency program in Chicago, which is Northwestern University. And one of the things that I did, there was a time where I thought I was going to be a clinical researcher. And so I actually took a very deep dive into clinical research and epidemiology. And I was at the University of North Carolina. I was on a grant from the National Institute of Health and studying at the School of Public Health at the University of North Carolina, which is tied with Harvard as being the #2 school of public health in the country. So, and during that time, I was publishing papers and I was, doing complex high-level analyses, statistics, published more than 20 papers. And the point being that, I fell in love with clinical care. I missed taking care of patients. I couldn't have it both ways. I had to choose one or the other. Where was my passion? And given that choice, one way or the other, I chose to take care of patients and became a gastroenterologist. But, here I am. And I'm going to take off my gastroenterology hat for a moment and throw that to the side. It's kind of dirty. And I'm throwing on my epidemiology hat that I haven't worn in a few years because this is what my life was. I was immersed in this kind of stuff for a long period of time. And, this is my language. And so it's something that I feel very comfortable. I don't love what's happening. I don't love what's happening. I'm not having fun with COVID-19. I'm not, this is horrible. It's destroying so much for all of us. But what I do love is providing people with high quality data, information, facts that you can lean on. And when we take the information, it empowers us in a way where we stop being victims and we start being the ones that are taking control and determining outcomes. And that's what we need to do.
It's a great message. And I guess with so much information out there right now, it would be, I guess, understandable to be quite confused. Like there's so much that you're seeing on social media, that we're seeing in the mainstream media. And then obviously the alternative media is also grabbing hold of this. So there's a lot of conspiracy around the whole topic. So I guess that's an area that we could cover first. So yeah. I think that I'm really curious to hear how you understand this. that I've heard from a lot of different sources, and I'm not saying these are legitimate, we just want to address them and make it public so everyone can understand what they mean, that this is, the numbers have been revised and this is not much worse than a seasonal flu.
Yeah.
How would you like to respond to that?
So I would love to tackle this question. And then if it's okay with you guys, I would love to talk about our understanding of how this has played out. And then maybe we can dive into some of those conspiracy theories.
Sure.
Cool. So people are saying, oh, like this is just, it's like the seasonal flu, or it's a bad version of the flu. Why are we destroying our economy for this? Why did I lose my job for this? Why is my small business going under for this? And I totally get that. Every single one of us is facing challenges right now. I can assure you I'm facing my own challenges at work and with some of the things that we have going on. But this is not the seasonal flu. And we need to look at the facts. And let's talk about the differences. Number one, let's talk about how contagious this virus is. Okay. So the seasonal flu sweeps through on a yearly basis. And the number that we use to understand how contagious a virus is called the R naught. The R naught basically means this. If I get the virus, how many new people am I supposed to give it to, statistically speaking? Like, what's the average? All right. So the R naught for the flu is 1.3. So basically, if I get the flu, you expect I'm going to make one new person sick. Right? I mean, essentially one. The R naught with this virus is substantially higher. You can see how it's spread across the globe very quickly. And the estimates for the R naught, based upon the available data, are 2 to 3, most of them settling into 2.5. Now, let me start with that number first, okay? If every person who gets COVID-19 infects 2.5 people, imagine a tree and every single branch creates 2 to 3 new branches. Really quickly, you're going to have a ton of branches, right? Because it is spreading so fast. It's not just me infecting 2 new people. It's me infecting 2, and then those 2 infecting 4, and those 4 infecting 8, and it just starts spreading like wildfire, okay? There's a problem with that number. There's a problem with that number of 2.5. Most experts think that that is too low, that it's not accurate. And the reason why is because that is based upon available data, but we have a testing problem. We don't know who actually has this virus. There are people who are asymptomatic that would never know that they should be tested. There are people with mild symptoms that would never call their doctor because they're not bad enough to warrant it. And in many countries, including the United States, there are people going to the doctor and saying, I'm having the symptoms. I had a fever. I had a cough. And they can't get a test. There's not the availability of testing. So the people who are getting the test are just this limited population that's severe and landing in the hospital. The outpatient person who rides it out is not being tested. They're just being told to go quarantine, but then they never count as one of the statistics. So there was a study where they modeled this, and what they said is that they think that the R naught could be as high as 6.6. Now that is ridiculous, because what that means is that if I get this, I'm going to make 6 people sick, and then those 6 people are going to make 36 people sick. And you can see how much faster that spreads compared to the flu, where it's, if I get the flu, one person gets the flu. And if they get the flu, then this third person gets the flu. Radically different. Way more contagious than the flu, okay? Now, the other problem is not only is this more contagious, it is more virulent. It's more dangerous. It's going to land, according to our current estimates, about 20% of people in the hospital. That includes young people, by the way. That includes young people. A lot of young people are ending up in the hospital. And about 5% who get this are ending up in the intensive care unit. That is a ridiculously high number. And if you look at mortality rates and you compare them by age, let's get the age and let's just basically make it standardized. Let's look at people over 65. Let's look at people 45 to 65. Let's look at people from 20 to 45. What you're going to find across the board is that the fatality rate, the percent of people who die from COVID-19 is at least 10 times more than influenza, at least. And that right there is based upon us saying that we have adequate healthcare resources. That's us giving them everything that we got from a healthcare perspective. But what happens when you overwhelm healthcare? This is where we need to do the math. Let me tell you about my community. And by the way, I kind of hope that people in my community are not listening to this right now because it's disturbing. Okay. There are 100,000 people. I live outside of Charleston, South Carolina. There are 100,000 people that live in our community. We have 2 small community hospitals. The flu has never overrun these community hospitals. We've never run out of ICU beds. We've never run out of ventilators. We've always had enough. These 2 small community hospitals combined have 25 ICU beds. If we shut down the operating room and stop doing surgery and turn the operating room into ICU beds, between these 2 community hospitals, we could have 60. We could have 60 ICU beds, okay, with ventilators. But there are 100,000 people, and I just told you that 5% need the intensive care unit. 5% of 100,000, if they all get sick, that's 5,000 people who need an ICU bed in a community that, even if we change the way that we do things, has 60. And this is the reason why, Matt, that, in New York right now, they are turning Central Park into a hospital. They have turned the Javits Convention Center into a hospital. In Nashville, at Vanderbilt, they turned the parking deck into a hospital because they need more beds. And they need to be prepared for this surge of patients. And this is, we've never seen anything like this from the flu.
What are some of the, I know you have a lot of friends that are on the front line, and some people feel that this is not serious, or, it's not, perhaps the media is overdoing it. You have some personal friends on the front line in New York right now. So these are people you personally know that you've been talking to. What are they saying? What's it like inside some of these hospitals in New York?
You know what? My friend Mauricio Gonzalez, who is an Instagram influencer, he's a real doctor. He has over 200,000 followers. I think he's close to 300,000 followers on Instagram. Mauricio is an emergency room resident. And he texted me the other night, and he is upset. He's upset. He's upset by the people who are not taking this seriously that he sees on Instagram. And he just got off of his shift. And he's going home, and he just intubated a guy who's younger than him. All right. So he had a guy roll into the emergency room. Then Mauricio had to drop a breathing tube in because the guy couldn't breathe on his own. That guy's going to the ICU, and he's going to be up in the ICU, potentially paralyzed with medication. For potentially up to 14 days. All right. And if things don't get better, that young guy is going to need a tracheostomy. Right. And that's not just one case. There are lots of cases like that. And doctors are not only taking that home, but the other problem, Matt, is that people who get this virus, let's pretend that I got this virus today. Okay. I have this virus. I could transmit it to my family, who I care deeply about. And I'm not going to know for anywhere up to 14 days that I even have the virus. And so it's a problem because these people are going to work, many times not having the protective equipment that they need, not only putting themselves at risk, but recognizing that when they go home, they could actually take this home to their family. And that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. And so these people feel like they're in a war right now. Honestly, they feel like they're in a war right now.
So it's obviously shocking news, and obviously it's nothing that we want to see happen in our own country. I guess we've seen this happen in China, we've seen it happen in Spain or in Italy. But now you're saying it's happening on our home turf. I think it changes things for people. And hopefully it's bringing to people's attention that this is not something to be played with, that social distancing does work, because what are some of the encouraging numbers that we're seeing through, through I think the UK, Italy, and Spain? Are we seeing any encouraging numbers from social distancing? Because there's a big conspiracy that social distancing is there to obviously to, for whatever reason, get us to take us home, and they're manufacturing some form of vaccine that's going to, make people a lot of money. That's all part of a conspiracy. Can you please just explain why social distancing works mathematically, what it does to that R0 number?
The R naught, yeah. So what I want people to understand is that this virus has a fatal flaw. All right, knowledge is power. And so if you understand that there is only one way for you to contract this virus, it will not spontaneously happen out of nowhere. The way that it occurs is if you come into contact with it. You need to come into contact with a person who actually has the virus, or you need to touch a surface where the virus exists, such as the person coughed and it landed on a table, and then you put your hand on the table and then you touch your face and you potentially get this virus. We think that most cases of transmission are occurring through respiratory droplets, either from a cough or frankly from breathing. And it's this proximity to other people that is the critical piece. If you never come into proximity of a person who has COVID-19, you won't get COVID-19. If you have COVID-19 and you never come into proximity of another person, you will not transmit COVID-19. And if we calculate the R naught, I don't need a calculator. The R naught in both of those situations is 0. You take this R naught that's nasty, 6.6, and literally this is not, the R naught is not etched in stone. The R naught is completely dependent on us and our choices. And if you drop it and you make it 0, this virus goes away in 2 weeks. All right. If we all did that, it would go away in 2 weeks. And even if we drop it substantially to the point where the R naught is now less than 1, you would not believe the effect that could have on controlling this virus. It would be a radically different situation if we could get it to a point where it's more similar to influenza in terms of how contagious it is.
Amazing. It's good news. I think that's something that we need to take into consideration, because obviously the media thrives on clickbait and it thrives on deaths, and right. It's disturbing out there. A lot of people, and I guess this would be interesting to put your other dirtier hat on to explain.
Who we have.
I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, because we have a lot of people that are very anxious right now. We all have family members that are in at-risk age groups, or people's livelihoods are right now just disappearing before their eyes. There's a lot of anxiety out there, and a lot of, interestingly, I think, gastrointestinal issues that are coming out of this. One, from just obviously people being anxious, and 2, the virus has a strange gastro impact as well. So it'd be interesting if you could just talk to both of those issues from your experience as a gastroenterologist.
Well, so let's start this. Let's pretend this virus literally didn't exist, which I guess there are some people who think that is the case right now, which is quite remarkable. But let's just pretend for a moment that it didn't, okay? You take people and you put them through stress. And there's different ways that each one of us manifest our stress. Some people manifest headaches, but more of us manifest digestive symptoms. Some people lock up and they get very constipated. Others will actually loosen up and have urgency and diarrhea. And so no matter who you are, look, we are all, unless you have completely convinced yourself, which I would be very impressed if you could do this. If you've completely convinced yourself that this is a hoax and there is no threat that exists, congratulations, you're not feeling stress right now. The rest of us, we are all feeling threatened by what is happening in one way or another, whether it's the economic impact or it's the threat to our health. We are all feeling it. It's scary times, and that can definitely manifest with digestive issues. Here's where it gets a little tricky. This virus, one of the things that makes it very dangerous is that the virus can wear different masks. It can hide, it can sneak in, it can present like something similar to something else. And I can expand on that in more detail in a moment, but let's just talk about the GI stuff. There are studies coming out that are saying that, number one, it's extremely common for people to lose their appetite. Extremely common. I mean, gosh, I could lose my appetite because I'm stressed. Number two, diarrhea. Diarrhea is a symptom that appears to be actually quite frequent, quite common. And many times, so we have been taught that fever and shortness of breath and cough are the classic COVID symptoms. Many times diarrhea is the first symptom. And you wouldn't think. You're just like, I'm stressed. Or you would think, I got a bug, right? You do have a bug. It's not the typical bug that causes a gastroenteritis though. This is the COVID-19. And so this is where I would make an argument, Matt, that whatever symptoms you have, if there is a possibility that this is COVID-19, you have to behave like you have the virus. That's the only way to protect other people from you transmitting it to them. Now, if you get this bug, okay, stomach gets upset, you start having diarrhea. To me, the game changes when you spike a fever. If you spike a fever, clear cut, you need to be tested. If that diarrhea is severe to the point that you become dehydrated, lightheaded, weak, you should probably be tested, okay? We need to create thresholds where if you trip that wire, then we're saying, look, this is severe. Like, this is not just casual diarrhea, right? And if that's the case, you may require testing. One of the other things that I look at is whether or not people poop at night. So if I'm stressed, I will wear that stress all day long, but I will not be waking up to go number two in the middle of the night. People that have irritable bowel don't do that. So when you're waking up in the middle of the night because you have to poop, it implies that you have either an infection or an inflammatory condition. And in this setting, what we're saying is you need to be aware of the possibility that that could be the virus. That could be SARS-CoV-2. So, and this is where the challenges lie with, this kind of thing. Why is it the gut? Why is it targeting the gut and the lungs? There's actually some interesting stuff. I'm going to turn into a nerd. I hope you guys don't mind them. Okay. I'm a science guy. So the virus, if you look at it, it has this thing called a spike protein. All right. And it's like an appendage. It's creepy looking, like a mace, it's like this ball with a stick. And this spike protein allows it to latch on to this particular receptor called the ACE2. The number one location for ACE2 is the lungs. The number two location for ACE2 is the gut. And this is part of the reason why you see people who are presenting with digestive issues before they ever get the fever or the respiratory symptoms.
Fascinating.
That's great. So if someone was, obviously, you should get tested. I know that there's some pitfalls there. Maybe we should address that first, actually. So how does someone get tested? Say they're like, oh, Dr. B, I am having these gastro symptoms. I did spike a fever. I should get tested. How easy is that to do? And I understand that it's actually not. So could you speak to that, please?
Am I allowed to cry? I mean, honestly. So, all right. The country that has been the most successful in the fight against COVID-19 has been South Korea. Per capita, their testing is off the charts. And what they're doing is they're testing. They have made it easy. They have made it free. People know where to go. And if you test positive, they backtrack and they start figuring out whether you have symptoms or not. Who are the people that you've been in contact with? All right. So South Korea has created the model. In the United States, we need more testing. It is not readily available right now. Many places, I speak to my friends, even who are in New York, and they have very explicit criteria that people need to meet in order to qualify for a test. Sarah, this is a moving target. By the time this podcast airs, even if it's airing tomorrow, we may already have changes in terms of how we're going about doing this. From my perspective, if you're worried that you may have COVID-19, number one, pretend like you have COVID-19 to make sure that you don't infect other people. But number two is if you start to manifest more severe symptoms, you should be in contact with your doctor to figure out if it's possible to get testing, or look within your own community. So I could tell you in Charleston where to go to get tested, but it's going to vary within your own community. And many times the local hospitals will know where to direct you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so, okay. And then step two, someone's assuming they have COVID-19. They're not super severe, so they're going to stay home and wear it out. What are some advice you could give them to, recover as soon as possible?
You know what? Honestly, okay, what we're talking about is immunity, right? And I want people who are listening to this podcast, to this show, to not wait until they think they might have COVID-19 to start addressing their immunity, because you're going to get pretty darn weak results. The time to do it was 3 months ago, a year ago. The time to do it is now. The time to do it is now. Don't wait another day. And let's talk about the things that I care about. And this is where there's some misinformation that I see being tossed about. Okay. You can't take a person with a C- immune system and pop one supplement and expect that their immune system is an A+. That's not the way that this works. Now, I am doing some things differently from a supplement perspective, and I do believe that there is value there. Do not get me wrong. But it starts with diet and lifestyle, right? If you're boozing it up, if you're having a COVID-19 party and you're going to bed at 4 a.m. and you're getting 3 hours of sleep and you're eating junk food all day, gosh, I'm sorry, the supplement is just not going to hack it. It's just not going to do it, right? Let me tell you about an interesting study that I find to be fascinating. So you guys know this. I want the viewers to know this. 70 to 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. Let's zoom in with a microscope for a moment into the gut, and let's look at the wall of the gut. And there's this thing called the epithelial layer. And it's a single layer of cells. Pluck a hair from my head, look at that hair, and this epithelial layer is thinner than that single hair, okay? And on one side is 70 to 80% of your immune system. And on the other side of this epithelial layer is 38 trillion microbes. Your microbiome lives right there in proximity to your immune system, and you cannot separate the two. When we hurt the microbiome, we hurt the immune system. When we see things that damage the microbiome, like antibiotics or like binge alcohol consumption, you will also find that the studies showed the exact same things also damage the immune system. When a person develops allergic diseases or autoimmune diseases, you will also find damage to their microbiome. You can't separate them. They always are moving in tandem because they're critical to each other. The microbiome teaches the immune system how to function properly. A healthy microbiome is a healthy immune system. You want to optimize your immune system? Work on your microbiome.
Awesome.
Honestly. And so let me give you an example of one quick study. Okay. So, and you can watch The Gut Solution. You can read my book. My book was written entirely, Fiber Fuels was written entirely for the purpose of optimizing the microbiome. And I talk in there about how this has an effect on the immune system. I talk in great detail about it. Let me give you an example of just one study, okay? You can't do this in humans. It would be unethical. So they did a study where they infected mice with influenza. Influenza, of course, is a respiratory virus. We were just talking about it a moment ago. They infected the mice with influenza, and then they fed them one of two diets, a high fiber diet and a low fiber diet. The authors predicted that what they would find is that because fiber is anti-inflammatory, They thought that the mice on the high fiber diet would actually do worse. They thought they would die more. They thought they would have worse symptoms. And the reason why is because you need inflammation to fight an infection. Inflammation is your immune system. And the authors were shocked when they found that the mice eating the high fiber diet lived longer, less symptoms, and objectively, when they measured how well their lungs were working, their lungs were better. And so they had to backtrack. The authors go, what the hell? What is the deal here? And they backtracked. And you guys probably know where I'm going with this because you know what I'm a big fan of, but I'm going to take your listeners there.
Please.
They backtracked to figure out, well, what was it that made the immune system so good in fighting influenza? And they discovered that it was the fiber being consumed by the microbiome. And when the microbes eat the fiber, they release short-chain fatty acids. And here's what the short-chain fatty acids were doing in the lungs, not in the gut, in the lungs. Recruiting CD8 cells. CD8 cells are the cells that you want to fight the virus. You're getting the right soldiers on the battlefield. Take it the rest of the immune system, cool it off. When people develop acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, you hear about this cytokine storm. That's the immune system overreacting, taking down the lungs, destroying it. When people get super sick with this coronavirus, it's not actually the virus, it's their immune system and the way their immune system is reacting. So what you want is you don't want more immune system. What you want is you want optimized. You want optimized. You want targeted. You want precise. You want to get the right soldiers in the game fighting that virus. But what you want is the rest of the immune system to not get trigger happy. You need it to chill out. And so in this study, that's what they found is that the short chain fatty acids from fiber working through the gut microbiome, working through the immune system, were actually making the mice more effective at fighting influenza. And there was a second study that showed the exact same thing with a different respiratory virus called RSV. So it was reproducible across several different types of viruses. So to me, that's what the immune health is. Immune health is optimize your microbiome first, supplements come later.
What would your top fast tips if you're going to load the gun or the revolver of the microbiome boosting? So if someone's right now like, oh no, I've been binge drinking, blah blah blah, they're sure their microbiome is shot right now and they're freaking out and they want to boost their immune system as quickly as possible.
And I'm sure we'll get more of an in-depth approach when we actually get our hands on your new book, Fiber Fuel, that's coming out May 12. But in the meantime, can you give us a teaser? Dr. B's top 3 hot tips for optimizing gut health. What are the biggest needle movers?
Oh, right. I would say number 1, maximize diversity of plants in your diet. You don't need to be eating a vegan diet. You don't need to be 100% whole food plant-based if you're not ready to do that. But no matter who you are, no matter what diet you're on, you can take the plant elements of your diet, ramp it up a little bit, and add more diversity. So get as many different types of plants as possible. That's number 1. Number 2, big believer in fiber, obviously. So I am a believer in a fiber supplement, actually. I'm taking a couple of them. And what you want are prebiotic fiber supplements. So I do acacia powder, beta-glucan. Beta-glucan is amazing for the immune system. You can do glucomannan, guar gum, wheat dextrin. There are a number of different choices that you can do to target the microbiome with prebiotic supplements. Mm-hmm. Number 3.
Quick question first. Sorry to disrupt your flow, but I think it would be great just to get a picture of what fiber is, because I think you've just given a few examples of supplements, but I think when you mention fiber, I think people maybe have different pictures of what that means. Some might be thinking of the gritty stuff our grandmas used to eat, or like, I don't know. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that there's different types of fiber. Bugs eat different things. So maybe you could just speak to that.
Sure, yeah. So let me just connect, I guess, number 1 and number 2 together real quick.
Perfect.
Fiber is a part of plants. There are many, 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 many different types of fiber. Like literally, we don't even have an estimate. It could be millions, could be billions. Each one is unique in its own way, has its own properties. Some of them are what we call prebiotic, meaning they feed the microbiome. That tends to be what you'll see labeled as soluble fiber. Some of it tends to be the roughage, which is the grit. That's the insoluble fiber, and that typically is not feeding the microbiome per se. But the key is that a plant, a black bean has its own unique types of fiber, and so does kale. And the fiber that you find in the bean is going to feed certain populations of bacteria that thrive in the gut when you eat a bean. And if you get rid of that bean and you take it out of your diet, those same populations will start to die. But this kale over here is not going to feed the exact same populations as the bean. The kale is going to feed its own little crew of populations. So the point is that every type of plant has fiber. Every type of plant has prebiotic fiber, and every single type of plant is going to feed different types of microbes that live in your gut. When you do diversity of plants, you create diversity within your microbiome. You are supporting as many different species as possible, and diversity is a marker of gut health. The more diversity that you have in your microbiome, the healthier your gut is. So this is the reason why we want the fiber, and this is the reason why we want the diversity of plants.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent.
And number 3 is just like, let's just like take the American college kid and say, you should do the opposite. Okay, because lifestyle actually has a huge effect on the microbiome. We tend to fixate on diet. But simple things like going to bed around the same time, going to bed reasonably early, getting your 8 hours of sleep, getting some exercise. Like, if you're a smoker, you need to quit smoking right now. If you like to have a drink, that's okay. But let's not go crazy to the point that you have a hangover. That hangover is indicative of damage that you've done to your microbiome. So from my perspective, it's just these simple things: healthy lifestyle, healthy diet. That's going to build your gut and your immune system into a fortress and help protect you.
Brilliant.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that about alcohol, because I saw a statistic yesterday from our own home country in Australia that outside of toilet rolls that we've been hoarding very intelligently. Second, we've also been hoarding alcohol. So,
Except for Corona beer.
yeah, except for, yeah.
That's kind of funny.
That is still well in stock.
But obviously it's indicative of a lot of people are really stressed.
Mm.
And obviously there's that feedback loop of stress to the microbiome as well. How does stress impact the microbiome?
Yeah, so stress, believe it or not, can induce dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is the word that we use. Some people call it leaky gut. Dysbiosis is the word that we use that means damage to the gut, like the opposite of gut health. Okay, loss of balance. And so let me give you an example. So we're going through a stressful period right now. And the most challenging patients that I take care of, and I have great sympathy for them, are the people who are the victims of stress, particularly people that are victims of trauma as a child. So whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, or sexual, those people can't let go of that. That stress lives inside of them, and it manifests in their microbiome with dysbiosis. And then they have digestive issues. And so they come to me for their digestive issue. And as they get to know me and they become comfortable, it's usually after 5, 6, 7 visits that we get to a point where they're able to open up and talk about those kinds of things. And you realize that you can't fix their gut until you fix this trauma. You have to address the trauma in order to fix the gut. And the same is true with people that have disordered eating. Disordered eating is like, by the way, when I make this comparison, I'm not making it casually, but I think it's real. It's like alcoholism. An alcoholic is still an alcoholic 20 years later. A person who has disordered eating still struggles with those thought processes 20 years later. And when I was at the University of North Carolina, they did a study. They had a huge, huge eating disorder clinic. And I became friends with many of the PhD psychologists that dedicated their life to treating patients with eating disorders, mostly women, but patients with eating disorders. And we would have meetings together because there were so many patients suffering with digestive issues. And so they did a study looking at the microbiome of people who have anorexia and bulimia, and found that it basically created a very disrupted, dysbiotic microbiome. Now, imagine you're a person who has a disordered pattern of eating. It's an unhealthy relationship with your food. And then on top of that, when you eat, you have food sensitivity, you don't feel well, you have gas, bloating, abdominal pain, potentially diarrhea or constipation. How's that person supposed to get better? Right? And it starts to create this feedback loop, like you were saying, Matt, and it creates a real challenge. So the point is this: whether it's trauma, whether it's a history of disordered eating, whether it is severe stress like what we're currently dealing with, none of those things are good for our gut. And it is important that we try to manage our stress to the best of our ability.
So things like there was an interesting study done with deep breathing and its immediate impact on the microbiome. Is that correct? So do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, they have studies showing that, like, literally, whether it's deep breathing, whether it's meditation, that when you take away the stress, the gut heals itself very quickly. And a lot of this circles back to this hormone CRF. CRF is released from the pituitary gland in the brain in response to stress. But if you have persistent, ongoing stress, the way that we're dealing with it right now, you have this persistent release of CRF. And that basically is disruptive throughout the entire body, including to the microbiome. And so when you can break that cycle, then you can basically allow the gut to start to heal and restore itself.
Mm-hmm. And how would you know if you had a healthy gut microbiome?
Let's see. Can I make poop into a vital sign?
Yes, you can.
I would, because I think that the way that you poop is, like, actually quite telling. So I think that having regular bowel movements that are effortless, dare I say, enjoyable, like having a bowel movement it's not supposed to be a chore. It's not supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to require effort. It's supposed to come very naturally. And, honestly, Sarah, I mean, I think you and I perhaps have talked about this before, that we have normalized abnormal, because we are such a fiber devoid society, whether it be the United States or Australia. To us, normal is one bowel movement a day. If we were eating fiber the way that we're supposed to, we'd be having 3 bowel movements a day, every single one of us. And if you look at, tribal people, like, for example, take the Hadza in Tanzania, they're eating 100 grams of fiber per day. We're eating 15. So, I do think that there's, like, this huge deficiency that we have, and there's an opportunity to try to fix that.
And particularly when you look at, certain, ideations, I guess you could call it, of what a paleo diet might look like. A lot of people don't realize how really fiber rich it was.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think your point, Matt, is this: there are different forms of healthy diets. But it's hard for me to believe that a diet devoid of fiber is a healthy diet based upon everything that I've seen from the science. It's hard for me to believe that. And so there's different ways to be healthy. You could take a paleo diet, and to me, I would make some modifications, and I would put diversity of plants in there. And, to me, that's a very healthy diet. Like, I would not contend with the health of that diet, right? So I think the point is that there's different ways that we can approach this, but I feel like there's also core philosophies that are true for all of us based upon human biology. And that is that we do well when we're eating a wide mix of different fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and we can, people can debate whole grains, but I think that there's value there.
That's awesome. Well, that's yeah, that's a really good way to sum things up. That you know, whatever you're going through right now, whatever experience you're having, and it's obviously very stressful, we can increase fiber. We can begin to repair our immune system, and we can also drop that zero value to obviously not impact our, you know, already at least projected to be overrun hospital systems. Because even some of the latest studies we've seen, even if we delay the curve, so say we start flattening this curve and we
Yeah.
start seeing progress, that doesn't automatically get us out of, you know, harm's way. It's not like we've solved the problem.
No.
And I think that's also a danger once people start seeing that curve flatten or they start seeing it decreasing, which we hopefully will start seeing soon, that we're all of a sudden we're totally fine. How would you just like to finish on that of like, what's the long-term play? You know, we're stuck at home in quarantine. This is an opportunity for us all to reboot our health. What is your long-term, if you could just speak to America or speak to the world right now for that next 3 to 6 months, what would you like to say?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I would tell every single person listening that I love you and I appreciate you and I'm glad that we're alive. So because I think that now is a time for gratitude, to find the positivity. It is so easy to allow what's happening, which we have no control over, to just drag us down into negative thought patterns or sulking or feeling bad about things or fear. When in fact, I think that what you do is you follow the recommendations that are laid in front of us to protect yourself, to protect your family and the people that you care about. You do those things. And then what you do is you find the optimistic outlook. You say, what is it about what's happening right now that that is really good and that I'm grateful for? So like, I want to hear from you guys what has been happening with you that you are grateful for. But I'll just tell you real quick. I teach a class that like I'm teaching a course right now about gut health. And we did this exercise the other day, and I was blown away by some of the responses that I got from the people in my class. And I'll share with you what I said, which is that the other day, so you guys know, I've been on the go like super hard. I work full time as a gastroenterologist. And then, like, beyond working full time as a GI doctor, I also have like this social media thing and building a website and writing a book and launching the book and all those things, right? So unfortunately, I wish this were not true, but it drags me away from my family sometimes. And with this and the forced slowdown, I've had a lot more time at home with my son. And he's 3. And the other day, he turns to me and he goes, "Daddy, you're my best friend."
Oh.
And,
Oh.
you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know what? Like, this virus is going to go away. It's going to go away. But the time that I've had with my son and that special bond that could carry forward way beyond this virus and really solidify the connection between him and I. And I'll still be thinking about when he said that 5 years from now. That to me is what this needs to be about, finding the positivity of, look, I was forced to do something I didn't want to do, but look at this beautiful thing that came out of it. How about for you guys? Like, tell me what positive thing has come out of this for you? I'm sure there's something.
Yeah, I definitely have been thankful that we've been able to quarantine together. It's definitely a nice thing. And what's been cool about, you know, isolation, and I've been seeing a bit of a groundswell of my peers just thinking about how can I better myself during this time that I have alone. Like, what can I study? I have a friend that's starting to learn piano while he's at home, and I have another friend that, like, she's super into like dog training. She's like learning about canine diets, and like some friends are working in their home garden. And I think it's a matter of perspective. Obviously this whole situation is horrible, but there's definitely things that we can celebrate for sure out of it. And what can you do with the time that you have at home? Can you look back at the time you spent in quarantine, like completing Netflix, or can you do that thing that you've always been meaning to do? So
right, yeah.
I think we've been, we started our podcast, our video show during quarantine. That's what we did. We set up this studio, and we're doing our best to make the most of this situation. And I think
that's amazing. Yeah.
We're thankful for it.
And I heard Sir Isaac Newton, like he wrote many of like the laws of science when he was on quarantine.
Yeah.
And then I forget which book it was. Maybe it was King Lear, but like Shakespeare wrote a book when he was on quarantine for the Black Plague. So, the idea of quarantine is not something that we've ever been exposed to during our lifetime, but there are many people that have had to endure this before us.
That's awesome. And I guess that's a beautiful place for us to land and where to finish, because, there is hope. There at the end of the storm, there's the golden sky, and we can like look forward to that day when we can, I can't wait to get all our friends together once we're finally defeated this virus and party and thank the emergency service doctors that are putting their lives at risk right now all around the world. And this would be a great opportunity for us all just to, if you know anyone that's working as a nurse or any part of the hospital, really, from the doctors to the nurses to anyone that's involved, to make sure you support them. They're putting their lives at risk. They're putting really their families at risk. When you look at the numbers of infected cases within Italy, for example, a lot of them are actually healthcare workers. And so I think that's a great place for us to land. Thank you so much for your time. Tell us just so quickly, just a bit about your book so people know how to find it or know when it's coming out.
Well, so you can find me on Instagram as the Gut Health MD. Come to my website, which is theplantfedgut.com. I'm going to have some COVID-19 type stuff. Honestly, I'm going to have a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out of my website and out of my email list in the coming weeks. So I would encourage people who want to be a part of like the excitement of building up to this book launch, come to my website, theplantfedgut.com, sign up for my email list. And then May 12th is the book launch. The book is called Fiber Fueled, Fiber, which I have learned that it's spelled quite differently in Australia. So including the word fueled is spelled differently. So Fiber Fueled is the name of the book. It's launching in the US and North America on May 12th, and it's available for pre-order right now. So if you're interested, you can definitely pre-order it, and it will be at your house the day that it comes out, which is great because basically this is the playbook. This is the playbook for gut health. This is the playbook. I mean, I even have a 4-week meal plan in there. So like literally read the book, follow the plan. This is basically built to get your immune system on track.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to finish it there. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Will. We'll drop a link for your socials in the description below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. Also, leave a comment just to say thank you so much for your time that you've obviously given us so generously tonight away from your family. But I think the information you've shared has been so practical. And so, obviously, and share this with your friends. This is the message that we need to get out. It is something that's serious, but we also things that we can control. And we will, if we work together and we all look out for each other, we will get on top of this. So thank you so much for your time tonight, Dr. Will. You're a legend. We've loved getting to know you over the last 12 months. It's exciting to see your socials blowing up and you're really growing in influence, because we believe that you just have an amazing message that I think needs to be heard. And so thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you guys are the best. I'm so grateful for you.
All right, guys, I hope you really enjoyed that interview. We got so much out of it personally. So make sure you share with your friends and family that need to hear it most. And let us know what you thought of the content. Either give us a like, dislike, whatever you feel like, or a comment. And let us know, do you think the gut is an important tool in our fight against COVID-19? We'd love to hear from you. So hit that like, subscribe, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Catch ya.